In 2012 in Brazil, in a city located in the interior of the state of Pernambuco called Garanhuns, a crime had international repercussions. And I can tell you, in fact I guarantee, that this episode is one of the most complete versions of this story that you can currently find on the internet. Today's case will talk about the Brazilian cannibal trio of Garanhuns. They killed people, then used their fleshes to make snacks, which they sold all over the city. The first character in this case is called Jorge Beltrão Negromonte da Silveira, the son of Portuguese immigrants. He was born on December 14th, 1961, and lived in Pernambuco. George was a cultured man with a wide vocabulary. As a child, he lived in Portugal and returned to Brazil before his teen years. He attended the best schools and graduated with a degree in physical education. He earned a black belt in karate and taught martial arts at a gym in Olinda. However, he also suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. George said that, as a child, when he played with his friends, he could see spirits among them. When they weren't visible, he could hear them. As a teenager, he was caught by his father talking to himself and said that a woman always accompanied him, even during his adult life. He reported that when he was at college, a spiritual mentor helped him with his studies. He also said that his own father, after he passed away, visited him to guide and teach him. On several occasions, George attended a psychiatric clinic, but his hospitalizations were brief and he did not receive proper treatment. The second character is Isabel Cristina da Silveira, born on May 12, 1961. She left school at a young age to work as a housekeeper and contribute towards household expenses. She and George met at their local church. Isabel saw in George the opportunity to change her life. They fell in love, both believing they could make each other happy. In 1984, when they were 22 and 23 years old, they married. But during the wedding party, George had a seizure. Holding a knife in his hand, he threatened to kill all the guests. Isabel forgave her husband, and their marriage continued. To help with their income, Isabel made pies and drumsticks to sell, while George taught karate classes. The third character is a girl who we will call Jessica Camila for now. You will understand why later. Jessica was born in 1986, and in 2003, when she was 16 years old, she met George. At the time, he was 42 years old and was her karate instructor at the academy. As time went by, the two grew closer and fell in love. But George did not want to end his marriage to Isabel. He invited Jessica to be his mistress, and she accepted. George also convinced Isabel to agree to this arrangement. In 2008, George and Isabel decided to move to Garanhuns. Jessica left her family home and moved in with them. Within this tryst, some cruel and diabolical ideologies took form, and George created a sect which he called the Cartel. It aimed to purify humanity. To achieve this, they believed that they had to kill unmarried mothers who were unable to support their children. They believed that these women were bringing children into the world to suffer, and for that they should be eliminated. But they would first be given the chance to have their souls purified. However, the voices in George's head only authorized sacrifices if it was confirmed that the victims had some connection with the number of the beast. This confirmation was made through numerology using names, dates of birth, or documents. The plan to find these women would be through babysitting job offers, because during the period when Jessica was between Olinda and Garanhuns, she gave birth to George's daughter. In February 2012, Isabel approached a girl on the street called Gisele Helena da Silva, aged 30, better known as Gisele of Pamphlets. She was the mother of 2 children. Isabel offered her a fictitious position of nanny, along with a generous salary. So, on the 25th of the same month, she went to Isabel's house and never left again. 3 weeks later, in March 2012, a young woman called Alexandra da Silva Falcao, aged 20, was taking her son to the health centre for a consultation. Travelling on public transport, she met Isabel, who offered her a position as a maid and babysitter, with once again a generous salary. On March 12th, Alexandra went to Isabel's house from where she never returned. It is difficult to know how many more victims this group would have attacked, because they were in fact caught for another crime: the misuse of third-party credit cards. The following month, April, Alexandra's parents, already desperate for information about their daughter, received her credit card bill at their home, which showed transactions made after March 12th. They immediately notified the police. Checking the security cameras of the establishment where one of the purchases was made, it was possible to see the day and time of the transaction, and in the images there was a middle-aged man and a young woman. It didn't take long for the investigators to identify them. On April 11th, police officers knocked on their door. The 3 of them were there: George and Isabel, who were 50 at the time, and Jessica, 22. George and Jessica were arrested as they were the ones in the images, and they needed to explain why they were in possession of a missing persons card. They both made some excuses, saying they found the card, but didn't know anything, etc. What began as a search to find a missing woman ended up revealing one of the cruelest crimes in Pernambuco. It was the attitude of the couple's daughter, only 5 years old at the time, that forever changed the fate of that group. She said to them her father buried people in the backyard. The information shocked the officers, who immediately began excavating the backyard. It was there that they found the bodies of Gisele and Alexandra. Isabel was also arrested, and together they assumed responsibility for the crimes. While searching the house for evidence, they found unbelievable things: cassette tapes, notebooks, diaries and drawings related to their ideologies and the macabre practices that the trio engaged in. In addition, there was a homemade book with several chapters written by George entitled Revelations of a Schizophrenic. Before I present some excerpts from this book, I will tell you how he describes himself in the biography of this document. George Beltrão Negromonte da Silveira, son of Portuguese immigrants, born in Recife. As a young man, he went through the dictatorship, but he never stopped expressing his ideas. Former physical education teacher, graduated from the University of Pernambuco, former karate teacher, writer, actor, author, composer, and musician. Schizophrenic since he was young, he never stopped following his path. An arduous road full of ups and downs, but one that never discouraged him. His book, made up of approximately 30 chapters, described his childhood, adolescence, his relationships, and mostly his beliefs and details of the actions of his group. Chapter 5: The Hovering Woman. I was coming from Belle's house, a girlfriend. As the neighbourhood she lived in was far from mine, I used my bike. One night I left later than usual. On the way back, the streets were deserted when I realised I wasn't alone, as there was a woman accompanying me. She was beautiful, yet exotic. What scared me was the fact that she was completely still and hovering above me. When I arrived at the sidewalk in front of my residence, she simply disappeared. Chapter 24. The macabre plan to destroy the cursed teenager. One day I took advantage of the fact that the evil teenager was not there. I agreed with Belle and Jessica a way to destroy her, and we came to a conclusion. Kill her, divide her, and bury her, but each part of her in a different place. It was a night of heavy rain, lightning and thunder. The evil creature was in a room in the house, so I look at Belle and Jessica with a look that night would be the right time to destroy evil. Every human being has killer instinct, and such instinct is released in situations like this. Chapter 26. The Divided. Me, Belle and Jessica fed on the evil meat, as if it were a purification ritual. The rest I bury in our backyard. There was also a diary notebook written by Jessica. On practically every page she demonstrated her love and devotion to George, who she referred to in the book as Monty. Monty advises me. His teachings are very heavy, but they serve as learning. To be the woman I am today, I needed the experiences of my man Monty. I thank my life teacher, who teaches me all the time, to be his eternal apprentice. I am really happy. You are my gift. You are everything in my life. I feel like a completely fulfilled woman. On one of the video cassettes, there was a home recording of a short film entitled Spirit. In the production, George and Isabel were the youthful protagonists in the story of Helen, a woman tormented by the spirit of her cannibal husband. It was recorded in 1994. The video contained scenes of seduction, violence, murder, cannibalism, and the hiding of a corpse, which gradually made the police suspect that life was imitating art. During the confessions, George stated that the two victims went through the purification ritual, and this process included the act of cannibalism. He claimed to be an avenging angel who killed to give the victim the opportunity to repent their sins so that they could enter the kingdom of heaven. As I said, the victims were chosen based on facts that indicated some connection with the number 666. George was unable to explain why the voices in his head had called for Giselle's death, but the last 3 digits of Alexandra's identity card were 666. George added that the next part of the procedure was that the victim, now forgiven by the divine kingdom, would have her body purified by being ingested. At the police station, Isabel confessed to many things with absurd and unbelievable details. Isabel cleaned parts of the victims' bodies, seasoned them, and gave them to everyone in the house to eat, including the couple's daughter, who unbelievably witnessed the crimes described here. The victims' bodies were eaten for 2 or 3 days. When their flesh started to rot, she found a way for the ritual to continue. She used the victims as filling for her pies and snacks and sold them to the people of the city. The story came out, and the local population was shocked. Many were psychologically disturbed, wondering what the effect would be on the health of those who consumed such food. Some people went to their now empty house to ransack it and set it on fire. In a repercussion of the case, Jessica's real family identified her in the photos, which were published in the media. Jessica was not her real name. Her name was Bruna Cristina Oliveira da Silva, who had been missing since 2008, and it was here that the police identified more crimes, including ideological falsehood, kidnapping, and murder. Bruna had run away from home in 2008 to live in Olinda with George and Isabel. But who then was Jessica Camila? In 2008, Jessica was just 17 years old, born on September 4th, 1990. She was the mother of a girl who was almost 2 years old. She sold sweets at traffic lights in Olinda. The young woman was approached by Isabel, who offered her a job as a maid, with an offer of a generous salary. She could bring her daughter to work. Initially, Jessica was very happy and talked to her parents about the opportunity, but they were suspicious since this amount of remuneration was unusual. Unfortunately, she ignored their concerns and went to Isabel's house that April. At work, Jessica, who took her daughter with her, was attacked, killed, and dismembered. Parts of her body were ingested by the criminals, and later other parts of her body were placed inside the structure of the house as it was being renovated, including under the floors and walls. She was the group's real first victim. Her daughter, in turn, witnessed everything and was taken in by the family. Bruna took Jessica's identity for herself, started acting as the child's mother, and even managed to falsify documents to obtain a new birth record for the girl. It was shortly after that everyone moved to Garanhuns. During 2013 and 2014, the trio gave interviews on television. Despite having previously admitted the crimes, they now suggested that they were not responsible for the acts. In a private interview in 2013, George said that Bruna was the mastermind behind all the crimes. She was the one who organized and carried them out. In 2014, in a new interview, he admitted that he participated in the execution of the crimes, but continued to state that Bruna was the leader. Bruna, in turn, never denied participation, but said that George and Isabel were the ones who chose the girls, and because she lived in the house under threat, she was forced to participate. She also said that she could not escape because she really loved George, and never had the courage to report it because she was afraid of becoming a snack. Isabel denied everything. She said she knew the facts, but was barely present during the murders. She also denied that she had made snacks with the victims, contradicting her statement at the police station. She claimed that these previous statements were given due to police pressure, as that was what they wanted to hear and that they had threatened to beat her. The trials of the accused were held together. The first hearing took place in November 2014 and was based on the crimes committed against the first victim in 2008, Jessica Camilla. They all continued to blame each other for responsibility, but in the end, George was sentenced to 23 years, and Isabel and Bruna received 20 years each for the crimes of murder, cannibalism, concealment of a corpse, kidnapping of the victim's daughter, falsification of documents and ideological falsehood. 4 years later, in December 2018, the trial was held regarding the other two victims, Gisele and Alexandra. During the hearing, George courted Bruna, kissing her on the hand, and Bruna laughed. Isabel sat in the middle of them looking sad and worried. The three were convicted of double homicide, triple homicide for base motives, murder, cannibalism, and concealment of a corpse, and their sentences were updated. George was now sentenced to 71 years, Isabel to 68, and Bruna to 71 years and 10 months. Regarding the victims' families, little is known, but we can imagine how much they are suffering to this day after losing their loved ones to such a cruel trio. Jessica's little girl, in this case the real Jessica, lives with her great-aunt. She is undergoing psychological care, and as far as we know, she is leading a healthy life. If you've made it this far, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to this channel. Also, add your opinion in our comments. Thank you very much. I will see you in the next case.